start a new book, Lamentations of Jeremiah, chapters 1 to 5, where we should see the mind of God. We get an insight into the mind of God. Lamentations was originally part of the book of Jeremiah. It was later isolated because it was read publicly at one of the feasts of Israel, included in the 5 megaloth, which are the scrolls they used to use, the red. Lamentations is read each year at Tishbav, which is a fast commemorating the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which is mentioned in 2 Kings chapters 25 verses 8 and 9, and it's happened in both 586 BC and AD 70, which we know, or should know. The style and content leave no doubt that Jeremiah, the weeping prophet as he's called, is the author. The book focuses on the destruction of Jerusalem as observed by an eyewitness, as it says in Jeremiah 37 verses 39. Jeremiah alternates between horrible accounts of the destruction of the city to the confessions of the people's deep sins, and then to his appeals to God for mercy. Each of the 5 chapters of the book is a separate poem or of moaning. The first 4 are acrostics. Each of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are used to begin each stanza of the poem. The acrostic is a literary device that makes it easier to remember and abstractly suggests that the author has covered his subject from the beginning to the end, like going through letter alphabet A to Z. It may also be that Jeremiah, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, made himself conform to this method to keep his grief from overwhelming him. Lamentations is a valuable commentary on sin and the consequences, and about the return to God for mercy. Lamentations chapters 3, 22 to 24 says this. So, we have read 2 of the main prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah. Also, the consequences of individuals or the nation of Israel not keeping God's laws. In Lamentations, we shall see the extent of the impact and get an idea of how seriously God takes the breaking of his commandments. Is this God, who we are told changes not, likely to feel any different for future violators of his commandments, i.e. in the New Testament and today, and not also bring on them the consequences he stated, whether in the individual lives when it comes to Judgment Day or otherwise? It is essential you read or listen to all of the chapters to get a fair impression of the mind and behavior of God. Yet the destruction Yahweh brought on the land was to cleanse it. Then 70 years later, Ezra and Nehemiah, he sent them to restore, or shall I say through Ezra and Nehemiah, he sent them to restore, rebuild and reoccupy the land. The same method that will be employed when he cleanses the world of his transgression of his laws and sends the Messiah and the resurrected righteous to restore, rebuild and occupy the new heaven and earth. So do not get the wrong reason why God partially destroyed Israel and the temple. It was to put a stop to them using his house, his temple, in the wrong way, polluted ways and polluted beliefs. The same pattern of many worship houses, we call churches today, who mix anti-God things and celebrations as Christmas and Easter with his system. In other words, reading into the Bible. The leaders led the whole church astray and brought on them the wrath of God. Lamentations 1, verse 1.
Lamentations chapter 1. How doth the city sit solitary that was full of people? How is she become as a widow? She that was great among the nations and princes among the provinces, how is she become tributary? She weepeth sore in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers she hath none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies. Judah is gone into captivity because of affliction and because of great servitude. She dwelleth among the heathen. She findeth no rest. All her persecutors overtook her between the straits. The ways of Zion do mourn, because none come to the solemn feasts. All her gates are desolate. Her priests sigh. Her virgins are afflicted, and she is in bitterness. Her adversaries are the chief. Her enemies prosper. For the Lord hath afflicted her for the multitude of her transgressions. Her children are gone into captivity before the enemy.
Verse 9.
Her filthiness is in her skirts. She remembereth not her last end. Therefore she came down wonderfully. She had no comforter. O Lord, behold my affliction, for the enemy hath magnified himself. The adversary hath spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things, for she hath seen that the heathen entered into her sanctuary, whom thou didst command that they should not enter into thy congregation.
My comment. When your enemy has contempt for you, they do as they please with things you hold valuable. In this case, they enter into Yahweh's sanctuary where they should be barred. By their actions and entrance, they pollute the sanctuary. Deuteronomy chapters 23 verse 3. An Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter in the congregation of Yahweh, even to the 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of Yahweh forever. Nehemiah chapters 13 verse 1. On that day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that an Ammonite and the Moabite should not come into the congregation of Yahweh forever. Daniel chapter 8 verse 11. And he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Daniel 11 verse 31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolation. Ezekiel chapters 44 verse 7. In that ye have brought into my sanctuary strangers, uncircumcised in heart and uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to pollute it, even my house, when you offered my bread, the fat and the blood, and they have broken my covenant because of all your abominations. So you see, entering the sanctuary is to magnify oneself and pollute it, and that is what I can remember his name, Antiochus Epiphanes did in Daniel chapters 8 or 7, I believe. We'll cover it when we get there. Moving on to chapter 2.
Chapter 2. How hath the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger, and cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel, and remembered not his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord hath swallowed up all the habitations of Jacob, and hath not pitied. He hath thrown down in his wrath the strongholds of the daughter of Judah. He hath brought them down to the ground. He hath polluted the kingdom and the princes thereof. He hath cut off in his fierce anger all the horn of Israel. He hath drawn back his right hand from before the enemy, and he burned against Jacob like a flaming fire which devoureth round about. He hath bent his bow like an enemy. He stood with his right hand as an adversary, and slew all that were pleasant to the eye in the tabernacle of the daughter of Zion. He poured out his fury like fire. The Lord was as an enemy.
Verse 14.
Thy prophets have seen vain and foolish things for thee, and they have not discovered thine iniquity, to turn away thy captivity, but have seen for thee false burdens and causes of banishment. All that pass by clap their hands at thee. They hiss and wag their head at the daughter of Jerusalem, saying, Is this the city that men call the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? All thine enemies have opened their mouth against thee. They hiss and gnash the teeth. They say, We have swallowed her up. Certainly this is the day that we looked for. We have found. We have seen it. The Lord hath done that which he had devised. He hath fulfilled his word that he had commanded in the days of old. He hath thrown down and hath not pitied. He hath caused thine enemy to rejoice over thee. He hath set up the horn of thine adversaries. Their heart cried unto the Lord, O wall of the daughter of Zion, let tears run down like a river day and night. Give thyself no rest, let not the apple of thine eye cease. Arise, cry out in the night. In the beginning of the watches pour out thine heart like water before the face of the Lord. Lift up thy hands toward him for the life of thy young children, that faint for hunger in the top of every street. Behold, O Lord, and consider to whom thou hast done this. Shall the women eat their fruit, and children of a span long? Shall the priest and the prophet be slain in the sanctuary of the Lord? The young and the old lie on the ground in the streets. My virgins and my young men are fallen by the sword. Thou hast slain them in the day of thine anger. Thou hast killed and not pitied. Thou hast called as in a solemn day my terrors round about, so that in the day of the Lord's anger none escaped nor remained. Those that I have swaddled and brought up hath mine enemy consumed.
So, do we get a picture? Chapter 3, reading a couple of verses, verse 22. It is of Yahweh's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassion fail not. They are new every morning, great is thy faithfulness. Verse 24. Yahweh is my portion, saith my soul, therefore will I hope in him. Yahweh is good unto them that wait for him, to the soul that seeketh him. It is good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of Yahweh. So the words of Jeremiah, one of the few who obeyed God and not man, regardless of their status or position. Reading from chapter 4, a few verses, verse 4. The tongue of a suckling child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. They that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. They that were brought up in scarlet embrace dunghills. For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hand stayed her. Verse 9. They that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. For these pine away, stricken through for want of the fruits of the field. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden, cooked to eat, that means their own children. They were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. All for breaking God's commandments. Chapter 5, chapter 5, restore us to yourself, O Yahweh. Verse 1. Remember, Yahweh, what is come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. Verse 7. Our fathers have sinned and are not, and we have borne their iniquities. Servants have ruled over us. There is none that doth deliver us out of their hand. Verse 10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. They ravished the women in Zion and the maids of the cities of Judah. Verse 16. The crown is fallen from our heads. Woe unto us that we have sinned. This is one of the few times the word black is used in the Bible. And some people will use to say, you see, the Israelites were black. They ignore the obvious word that says because of their terrible famine. If it was because they came out of their mother's womb or something natural, it would not have to add because of the terrible famine. But those people mislead by just picking the word black and use that as the evidence. Shalom until tomorrow, God willing.